The 1960s were a magical time in Tennessee State women's track and field history, and Wyomia Tyus is a huge reason why. A star among stars on the school's famed Tigerbelle's women's track team, Tyus dominated American sprinting, as well as on the world's biggest stage. She made history by becoming the first Olympic athlete ever to successfully defend her sprint title, racing to gold in the 100-yard dash at both the 1964 Games in Tokyo and the 1968 Games in Mexico City. And when she wasn't winning Olympic medals, she was sprinting to U.S. titles and setting world records on a regular basis. She's one of the best ever. Tennessee State's Wyomia Tyus races the stage tonight as a Hall of Famer. So Wyomia and I, we shared a van ride from the Eugene airport when we both landed for this event. We'd never met each other before. And I said, hey, I'm Neil Everett and I'm going to be hosting this deal. And I said, what do you want to talk about? And she told the greatest story the whole drive back. And I said, hey, when we sit down on that stage, I'm going to say, what do you want to talk about? And I just want to hear all that story again. But it really started with your coach. Yes. That's really where it started. And explain the relationship you had with Coach Temple.
Well, it's Coach Ed Temple, and I always call him Mr. Temple because that's what how I was raised in the South. You have to say Mr. Well, I met Mr. Temple when I was running in high school. He saw me at a track meet in Fort Valley, Georgia, and he was like a football coach. He would go scouting, looking for young women to bring to his summer camp every summer. He would train them, and we'd go to the AAU and all of that. And so he saw me run in Fort Valley, and after I finished the race, after I got third or fourth, he came up and talked to me and asked if I would be interested in coming in to Tennessee State for the summer to train at his camp. And I was like, yeah, it sounds okay. And he said, okay, you'll hear from me in a couple of weeks. And sure enough, we did. And then he came. He would always go to every girl's house, young lady that he was recruiting for the summer. He would go to their homes and talk to their parents and tell them what his rules were. And they were really tough rules. He would always say, you have to do it his way or hit the highway. And he came and talked to my mom, and I was sitting there, and he was sitting there, and he was, all I can remember is at that age, God, he talks a lot. And he talked to my mom, and after he finished talking to her, and he says, well, Tyus, because he calls everybody by their last name, well, Tyus, what do you think? I said, this sounds good. And he was like, would you like to come? And I said, yes, I would like to. So we said, okay. And he left, and I was like, I didn't think I could do it because I didn't think my mom would be able to send me. My father had passed away. And but my high school, raised $22 to send me to Nashville on the train, and which, that was a lot of money then. And as a matter of fact, got me a round trip ticket and I had some money in my pocket, so to speak. We came back, and when I went to Tennessee, I didn't know nothing about track. I was just out there running. I grew up with 3 older brothers. I could run. I could beat them. That's all I wanted to do was beat them, whether it was running, climbing trees, or riding my bike. And then I got he told me he would meet me at the train station because I went up on the train. And I remember one of my mom's friends said to me, now you get on that train and you sit there and you sit with dignity. I'm like, okay. So I had my little lunchbox and I sat there with my dignity. And when I got to Nashville, Mr. Temple was there and he says, Tyus? I said, yes, hi, Mr. Temple, how are you? And I said, okay. And then he said, okay, this is Rudolph. I said, okay. And then we got in the car, and that was Wilma Rudolph. I didn't know anything about Wilma Rudolph. I didn't know anything about it. But she had won her medals, but I didn't know anything about it at all. All I knew, I was sitting in the back seat, and he and Wilma were talking. And all I could think about, God, they talk a lot. I hope everybody don't talk like this. So we get to the dormitory, and there are other girls there, and it's about 25 or 30 of us for the summer. We're there for the summer program. And he says, Now, don't you listen to Rudolph. You go up there and you get you some rest, because it was in the evening. You get some rest because you have to be down on the track at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, 5 o'clock in the morning? Yes, and he says, well, we have a practice at 5, we have a practice at 1, and we had a practice at 3 o'clock. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. No, 5, 9, 5, 1. That was it. And we just, there were, all of us were there, and we all didn't know what was going on, but we all was like for the same thing. But after about a week of practice, girls were going home. They call home and they go home, and the practice was really hard. And I never practiced like that, so I was used to practicing maybe once or twice a week and winning. So I was like, I can win without practice. And I was there, and Mr. Temple, the practice was just so hard, and I called my mom and told her, this is too hard, I can't do this, this is too much for me. And she says, well, you can't come home. You said you wanted to go, so you have to stay. But you don't have to go back next year. And I just thought that was the worst thing in the world, but it was the best thing in the world for me. And I got to stay with Mr. Temple. And Mr. Temple was a coach that, he wanted to do the best for all women. For all the girls that were his at Tennessee State, he wanted to make sure we got an education. He wanted to make sure we could, when we went out on trips and stuff, we could get not just college education, you can go and get a worldly education. So he did all of that for us. And he also made us as a team, the Tigerbelles. He had us believing in ourselves, because at the time I was competing, there was no scholarships. There was no Title IX. As Mr. Temple would say, we were Title none. So but we got a scholarship. We got a work aid scholarship. So you're talking, I started school at Tennessee State in 1963. And here it is, we just celebrated the Title IX in 50 years. So you can imagine that. But Mr. Temple was always working for his girls and making sure we were all going to graduate, because he would always say to us that, track could open the door for you, but education will keep the door open. So he was really big on education, and every girl that came through there that wanted to stay, that stayed at Tennessee State, graduated with a degree. And he always said to us as a team, too, that everybody won't be able to go to the Olympic Games. Everybody will not win a gold medal. But everybody that's on the team can make a contribution, and that's what's important. And I have always appreciated that for him. And for me, one thing I've always, he's no longer with us, but I just wished everybody could have had an opportunity to meet this man that did so much, that cared about women, and making sure they're not only good in school, but good on the athletic field, and being able to be just worldly, as you would say.
Let's go from the sisterhood of the Tigerbelles to another thing worth clapping about, the 64 games in Tokyo, the 68 games in Mexico City, back-to-back golds in the 100. When you think back on that, what comes to mind?
Well, for 1964, I was just surprised. I didn't think I would win. I wasn't even thinking winning, because Mr. Temple was also, man, he coached me, coached all of us. He's like, he was telling me, Tyus, you're young. We don't expect you to do much. You first time out, you get an opportunity to make an Olympic team. So that's just great. But we're not looking for great things. The other thing was, Mr. Temple was the coach of the 64 team. He was also the coach of the 1960 team in Rome. So the first time they've ever let a coach go back-to-back on the Olympics. So he was our coach. And so Edith McGuire, they had picked her to win who was my best friend, to win the 100 meters and go on and win the 200 meters, and for us to win the relay, and she'd be like another Wilma Rudolph. She would win 3 gold medals in one thing. And I can just remember in the first heat of the 100, I ran, and I was comfortable. Mr. Temple said, Tyus, you look good. Just keep up the good work. Don't worry about winning. Yes, sir, Mr. Temple. And then in the next heat, I won. Then we'll get to the finals, and I was out on a workout, warm-up track, and he come over and he said, Tyus, I want to talk to you. I said, yes. And he says, you're doing well. I think you're doing a good job. It looks like if you continue running like you are, you can win maybe a 3rd place. I said, thank you, Mr. Temple. He said, okay, go out there and get him. I said, okay. So he had gone to talk to Edith about it, and Edith just ran away from it. She didn't want to talk to him. So when the gun went off, I started running, and I was just running, just having fun, because I had won all my heats, and I didn't even I was just a little kid having fun. And then I got about 80 meters out, I said, and I kept going, where is Edith? Because she always caught me about 50, 60 meters out. And I said, where is she? I wouldn't look around, because Mr. Temple always coached us. If you look one way, somebody passed you the other way. So, and then I kept saying, where is she? Then I could hear her. She was in the lane next to me. I could hear her running right there. And then next thing I know, the race was over. But I thought she had won, because I could hear her, because she'd always beat me right at the end. And she ran, and she said, Tyus, you won. I said, I did? I was so shocked. And so that's 64. 68. I mean, I wanted to go out on 68 winning, and I used to say, I didn't say it to too many people. I would say, hey, the 100 is mine. Nobody can have it. It's mine. I'm going to have it in 68. And I had, but the press and other people had counted me out. I was too old at 23 to be running. So, but when it came down to that 100 meters in Mexico City, I was ready. I won all my heats and came to the final. It was 3 Americans in the heat, and in the finals. And it was about to rain and all of those kind of things. But when the gun went off, I went off, and nobody could tell me I was not going to win, and I did. And the rest is history, should I say?
Back-to-back golds in the 100. And when I asked her, because we were talking in the van, and she's talking about the ladies trash talking, and I said, did you trash talk? And she looked at me, she said, I didn't have to. She doesn't have to, because she's a Hall of Famer. Wyomia Tyus, everybody. Thank you. Wonderful.